The notice appeared on his front door before the last car had even pulled away. It was printed on bright white paper, taped crookedly at eye level and stamped with the HOA's logo in bold ink. Unauthorized gathering, violation pending. Under it, a warning about fines and possible involvement of outside authorities. No prior warning, no citation number, no explanation. Just a threat. Earlier that evening, the house had been calm, a small family gathering, 6 people total. 2 cars in the driveway, 1 on the curb. No music outside, no shouting, just conversation drifting through an open sliding door and the soft clink of plates being cleared. Then the doorbell rang. He answered it himself. A woman stood there holding a clipboard like a badge. Mid-50s, HOA polo, tight smile that didn't reach her eyes. "I'm with the board," she said. "You're violating community rules." He didn't argue. He didn't raise his voice. "Which rule?" he asked. She flipped through blank pages on the clipboard. "Gatherings require approval." "I reviewed the bylaws before moving in," he said evenly. "There's no approval requirement for private guests." Her smile faded. "I'll be documenting this." "Of course," he replied, stepping aside so the door camera had a clear view. She noticed the camera then, hesitated, wrote something anyway. That should have been the end of it. It wasn't. 20 minutes later, 2 police officers pulled up. The neighbors peeked through blinds. Porch lights flicked on, one by one. The HOA woman stood at the sidewalk, arms crossed, watching like she'd already won. The officers knocked. He answered calmly again. "We received a complaint about a disturbance," one officer said. "There isn't one," he replied. "You're welcome to check." They did. No noise violation, no blocked roadway, no illegal parking. The officers stepped back outside. One of them glanced at the HOA woman. "Ma'am, there's nothing actionable here." She protested. "This is an HOA matter." The officer shook his head. "Not for us." They left. No report, no warning. The gathering ended shortly after, not because of fear, but because the evening had simply run its course. Hugs, goodbyes, doors closed, lights off. And then came the paper on the door. He didn't tear it down right away. He photographed it first. Time-stamped, door camera visible in frame, his house number clearly shown. Screenshot moment number 1. The unofficial HOA notice taped to the door. No citation number, no board signature, just a warning and a fine amount scribbled at the bottom. The next morning, an email arrived. Subject line, "Formal notice of violation, immediate attention required." It listed 3 fines: noise disturbance, unauthorized event, failure to comply with board direction. Total, $750. He opened the HOA bylaws PDF and searched each cited section. None existed. The rule numbers were fabricated. He didn't reply. Instead, he created a folder on his desktop, labeled it with the date, dropped in the photos, the email, the door camera clip, and a scanned copy of the HOA rules showing the cited sections didn't exist. He printed the email, highlighted the claims, stapled the bylaws behind it. Then he waited. 2 days later, the HOA woman approached him again while he was checking his mailbox. "You still haven't paid," she said, tapping the clipboard. "I received your email," he replied. "And?" "I'm reviewing it." Her tone sharpened. "Failure to respond escalates enforcement." "Understood." She leaned closer. "We can involve other agencies if needed." He met her eyes, calm. "I'm sure you'll do whatever you feel is appropriate." She blinked, clearly expecting resistance. Instead, she walked away, already dialing her phone. That evening, another notice appeared in his inbox. This one wasn't even on HOA letterhead, just a Word document attachment titled Final Warning. It threatened liens, outside enforcement, regulatory consequences. Still no rule cited correctly, still no board approval signature. He added it to the folder. Then he checked something else, the HOA board roster.
One name stood out, same last name as the woman, listed as community liaison. A quick public directory search confirmed it. Her spouse worked for the same federal department he did. Lower tier, different division. He didn't react. He didn't confront her. He didn't mention his job. He kept documenting. Every email, every notice, every time the door camera caught her stopping by his house and photographing it. By the end of the week, the folder had grown thick, and the HOA woman was just getting started. By Monday morning, the tone of the notices changed. They were no longer taped to the door. They were slid under it. Plain paper, no envelope, no board seal, just bold headings and escalating language. Second notice, failure to comply, administrative action pending. The fines doubled. The cited rules still didn't exist. He didn't react outwardly. He didn't contact the board. He didn't send a rebuttal email that could be forwarded or reframed. Instead, he started treating the situation like a routine audit. Every morning before work, he checked the exterior camera logs. Same pattern. The HOA board member arrived between 8:10 and 8:25 a.m., stood on the sidewalk, took photos of his house, then left. No interaction, no conversation, just documentation, hers and his. He exported the clips weekly, date-stamped, labeled. Then he pulled the HOA governing documents again, this time not just the bylaws, but the enforcement policy addendum and the fine schedule. There was a clear process outlined: written warning, cure period, board vote, formal notice with citation, right to appeal. None of that had happened. He printed the enforcement policy and placed it behind the notices in his folder. He highlighted the steps that were missing.
By midweek, the HOA emails escalated again. This one came from a personal email address, not the HOA domain. It warned of referral to outside agencies and potential regulatory consequences beyond HOA scope. No agency was named, no authority cited, just implication. He saved the header metadata, noted the sender, added it to the file. That afternoon, a new sign appeared near the neighborhood entrance. No unapproved events, HOA enforcement active. It wasn't approved signage. No board meeting had authorized it. He knew that because the meeting minutes were posted online, and he downloaded those too. Screenshot moment number 2. A screenshot of the HOA's own posted meeting minutes showing no vote or authorization for new enforcement signage. The sign stayed up for 3 days. During that time, 3 neighbors stopped by his house, not to confront him, but to ask questions. Quiet ones. They'd received similar notices in the past, fines that didn't match the rulebook, threats that never quite made sense. Most had paid just to make it go away. He didn't advise them, didn't collect statements, didn't encourage anything. He simply listened and documented the dates of those conversations for himself. On Friday, a certified letter arrived. This one looked official. Printed letterhead, formal language, a demand for payment with a 10-day deadline. It warned that failure to comply may result in further administrative escalation. He read it carefully. Then he checked something small: the signature block. It wasn't the HOA president. It wasn't the property management company. It was the same board member signing as compliance authority. That title didn't exist. He verified it against the HOA charter. No such role. That was the moment the situation shifted from overreach to misrepresentation. He didn't confront her. He didn't send the letter back. Instead, he made copies. One set stayed in his folder. The other went somewhere else. He submitted a quiet records request to the county. Nothing dramatic, just a standard inquiry asking whether the HOA or any individual board member had authority to issue enforcement notices on behalf of external agencies or to represent regulatory consequences. He attached copies of the notices. No commentary, no accusation, just a request for clarification.
Then he waited. The HOA board member didn't. Over the weekend, a new notice appeared, this one taped crookedly to the garage door. It referenced non-cooperation as a violation. That wasn't a rule either. He photographed it, logged it, removed it. The following Monday, an email went out to the entire block, not from the board, from her. It warned residents about ongoing enforcement actions and referenced his address indirectly. No name, just implication. That email did something she didn't anticipate. It created witnesses. People saved it, forwarded it, compared notes. And then, midweek, the county responded. Not with a ruling, with a question. They asked for clarification on whether the HOA had authorized the board member to issue notices implying regulatory authority or external agency involvement. They also asked for copies of any board resolutions granting such power. He forwarded the question to the HOA's official management email. No message attached, just the county's request. That afternoon, the sign at the neighborhood entrance disappeared. The next day, the HOA website quietly removed the enforcement language from its announcements, but the fines stayed active, and the board member stopped photographing his house. For the first time since the gathering, everything went quiet, which usually meant someone thought they'd won. If this feels less like an HOA dispute and more like a real abuse of authority case unfolding, consider subscribing, because what happens next goes beyond a simple notice.
The quiet lasted 4 days. On the 5th, a new notice appeared, this time not on his house, but on the community bulletin board by the mailboxes, printed, laminated, pinned with 2 thumbtacks. Enforcement action, address under review. No address listed, but everyone knew. Below it was a warning about outside referrals and administrative consequences if compliance wasn't achieved. Still no rule number, still no board vote. This wasn't about him anymore. It was about pressure. He photographed the board from 3 angles, made sure the date stamp and location marker were visible. Then he walked his mail back to the house and added the images to the folder.
That afternoon, an email arrived from the HOA management company for the first time. Short, careful. They said they were reviewing the situation and advised him to coordinate directly with the board member handling enforcement. He didn't reply. Instead, he did something quieter. He submitted a second request, this time to the HOA itself. A certified letter, standard language, asking for copies of any board resolutions authorizing enforcement, the vote record approving fines against his address, and the authority under which external agency referrals were being threatened. He cited the exact sections of the bylaws that required those records to exist. No accusations, no commentary, just a request. 2 days later, the HOA board member showed up again. Not at his door, at his driveway. She stood near the curb, phone raised, photographing the vehicles parked there, even though there were only 2, both registered, both allowed. He stepped outside, phone in hand, camera recording openly. She noticed and stiffened. "You're still non-compliant," she said. "I've submitted a records request," he replied calmly. "That doesn't stop enforcement." "I understand." She paused, then added, "If this continues, towing can be authorized." That was new. He didn't argue, didn't ask how. "Please put any directives in writing," he said. She didn't respond, just turned and walked away. He checked the bylaws again that night. Towing authority required a board vote, posted notice, and signage approved by the property manager. None of that existed.
The next morning, a temporary sign appeared near the driveway entrance. Unauthorized parking subject to tow, HOA. It wasn't metal, it wasn't mounted. It was a printed sheet taped to a stake. Unofficial, unapproved. He photographed it immediately. Then he checked the street. It was a public road, maintained by the county, not private HOA property. That mattered. He pulled the county map overlay and printed it. Screenshot moment number 3. A county map showing the roadway classified as public right-of-way, highlighted against the HOA boundary line. He didn't remove the sign, he let it stand. By evening, a neighbor knocked. Quiet voice, nervous. "Is this real?" the neighbor asked, gesturing toward the sign. "I don't know," he said honestly. "I'm asking for documentation." The neighbor nodded. "Okay." By the next day, 2 more neighbors had taken photos of the sign themselves. That afternoon, an email blast went out, again from the board member's personal email. It warned residents about enforcement zones and advised compliance to avoid complications. Still no board signature, still no authority cited. He saved it. Then he set the trap, not with action, but with timing. He forwarded the HOA management company the photos of the sign, the email blast, and the county map. No message, just attachments. An hour later, the management company replied asking the board member to clarify authorization. She didn't. Instead, the sign stayed up. The following morning, a tow truck idled briefly at the far end of the street. Didn't hook anything, didn't approach, just visible enough to be noticed. Neighbors watched from windows. Phones came out. The truck left after 10 minutes. That was enough. The board member sent one more message that evening. "This is your final opportunity to resolve informally." He read it once. Then he did the only thing he hadn't done yet. He attached the entire folder, every notice, every photo, every email, every bylaw excerpt, and sent it through official channels tied to his role. No explanation, no personal commentary, just documentation. The next day, the HOA board member removed the sign. The tow truck didn't come back, and an internal email from the HOA board went out to residents saying enforcement was under review. The fines were still listed as active, but for the first time, the HOA stopped escalating. From the outside, it looked like control had been restored, like the board had drawn a line, like they'd won. The HOA's next move was silence, formal, organized silence. A revised notice appeared on the HOA website under Community Updates. Enforcement review completed. Fines remained valid pending compliance. No explanation, no appeal instructions, no acknowledgement of errors, just a conclusion. The laminated sign was gone. The driveway notices stopped. The board member no longer appeared with her phone in the mornings. Even the neighbors stopped asking questions. On paper, it looked decisive and expensive. A new statement hit his HOA account portal 2 days later. The fines were still there, now bundled as a single balance with a late fee added. Total, just under $1,100. There was also a new line item, administrative processing fee. No such fee existed in the bylaws. This was the moment most people paid, not because they believed the fines were valid, but because fighting them took time, energy, and uncertainty. The HOA was counting on that fatigue. He didn't log in again. Instead, he printed the account statement showing the added fee and placed it on top of the stack. He highlighted the line item and wrote one word next to it in pen. Unlisted. That afternoon, the HOA board member reappeared, this time not alone. She was standing with another board member near the clubhouse as he walked by on his way back from a run. The second board member looked uncomfortable, arms folded, eyes down. She did the talking. "We've reviewed your situation," she said. "The board is standing by enforcement." "I understand," he replied. "You still have time to resolve this quietly." "I've submitted records requests," he said calmly. "I'm waiting on responses." She smiled, thin and tight. "Those can take a while." "I'm patient." The second board member finally spoke. "You should probably just appeal internally." "I will, once I receive the required documents." That ended it. No threats, no raised voices. From the outside, it looked like the HOA had reasserted control, and the homeowner had backed down into procedure. That perception spread fast.
A neighbor texted him later that night. Looks like they shut it down. Another said, probably not worth pushing anymore. Even the management company stopped responding to his forwarded emails.
For almost a week, nothing happened. Then the county followed up. Not with him, with the HOA. They requested documentation supporting the board member's authority to issue enforcement notices, implying regulatory or external agency involvement. They also asked whether the HOA was aware that enforcement actions had been represented as having consequences beyond HOA scope. The HOA had 7 days to respond. He knew this because the county copied him by mistake. He didn't forward it, didn't acknowledge it. He simply added it to the folder. 3 days later, the HOA sent him a formal appeal form, generic, fill in the blanks, with a 30-day review timeline. It felt like another stall. He completed it anyway, briefly, precisely. He didn't argue facts. He attached exhibits, HOA notices, bylaw excerpts, photos of signage, county road classification, emails threatening outside enforcement. No commentary, no accusations, just documents. The confirmation email came back automatically. Appeal received. Then, nothing. Day 7 passed. Day 8. On day 9, an email went out to residents announcing a special board meeting scheduled for the following week. No agenda listed. That raised eyebrows. The board member didn't attend the usual neighborhood walk that weekend. Her personal enforcement emails stopped entirely. The HOA account portal still showed the balance owed, late fees still ticking upward. From the outside, it looked like delay tactics had worked, like pressure had faded, like the system had absorbed the problem. On day 11, a notice appeared on the HOA website, buried deep, not announced. Temporary suspension of individual enforcement actions pending review. No explanation, no names, no apology. He printed it. At that point, the HOA likely believed they had contained the situation. No lawsuits, no headlines, no public fallout, just internal review. Quiet, controlled. But the county's deadline was still running, and the documentation he'd sent through official channels hadn't been acknowledged yet. When it finally was, it didn't come from the HOA. It came from an office that didn't use casual language. The subject line was short. Request for verification. And it wasn't asking him anything. The email didn't ask for clarification. It asked for confirmation. Not opinions, not explanations. Verification. The county office wanted to confirm whether the HOA board member had issued enforcement notices implying authority beyond the HOA, and whether those notices had been sent without board approval. Attached were copies of the very documents he had submitted weeks earlier, now labeled as exhibits. He read the email once. Then he replied with a single line. Confirmed. Attached documents are accurate and complete. He attached nothing new. That was important. 2 days later, the HOA sent out another community-wide email. This one was different. Short, vague, careful. The board is cooperating with a county inquiry regarding enforcement procedures. No mention of fines, no mention of authority, no mention of who triggered it. The HOA account portal changed that same afternoon. The balance was still there, but the late fees stopped increasing. The administrative processing fee disappeared entirely. No announcement. Just gone. He took screenshots. The next development didn't come from email. It came in the form of a posted agenda. The special board meeting now had one listed item: review of enforcement practices and officer authority. The board member's name wasn't on the agenda, but her role was. He attended the meeting remotely, cameras on for board members only, residents muted by default. The HOA president spoke carefully. We're reviewing procedures to ensure consistency with governing documents in local ordinances.
Then the board member spoke, briefly. She said enforcement had been misunderstood and that her intent had been to protect community standards. No documents were referenced, no votes cited. The management company representative asked one question on record. Can you identify the resolution granting you authority to issue enforcement notices on behalf of external agencies? There was a pause. Then, I believed the authority was implied. The silence that followed wasn't dramatic. It was procedural. The president thanked her and moved to the next item. The meeting ended without a vote.
The next morning, a letter arrived by certified mail. Not to him, to every resident. The HOA announced that certain enforcement actions issued over the past year were under review and that fines related to those actions were temporarily suspended. Not reversed, suspended. That wording mattered. By the end of the week, the county sent a second email. This one included the HOA's response. They stated that the board member had acted outside the scope of authorized duties and that no board resolution existed granting her authority to imply external enforcement or regulatory consequences. The county replied with one sentence, "Thank you. We will proceed accordingly." He printed that, too. 2 days later, the HOA website updated again. The fines were gone, not marked paid, removed. A new notice appeared under Financial Updates. Certain assessments issued in error have been voided. Refunds will be processed. Still no apology, still no names, but the system had corrected itself. Neighbors began talking, quietly, cautiously. Some checked their own accounts and found credits. Others received emails confirming refunds. No one celebrated. The HOA board member stopped appearing in public areas altogether. Her email address disappeared from the HOA contact list. At the following board meeting, the HOA president read a short statement. One board member has resigned effective immediately. No explanation, no discussion. The meeting moved on. Later that week, he received one final email from the management company. It confirmed that his account was in good standing and that no violations were associated with his address. No apology, no acknowledgement of error, just closure. The county sent one last message. They confirmed the inquiry had concluded and that no further action was required from him. That was it. No court, no confrontation, no public spectacle, just paperwork doing what it was supposed to do. The neighborhood didn't change overnight. There were no announcements posted on doors, no explanations taped to mailboxes, no meeting where someone stood up and admitted fault. Life simply resumed, quietly, almost awkwardly. The HOA website removed the temporary language and replaced it with a permanent update to the enforcement section. New wording, clear limits, explicit references to board votes, appeal rights, and documented authority. It read like something written by lawyers, because it was. The board member's name never returned to the roster. Her role was scrubbed from old PDFs. Meeting minutes were amended, archived pages updated with neutral language, correction for accuracy. Nothing dramatic, just erasure. A week later, refund checks began arriving. Not just to him, neighbors compared envelopes discreetly. Some received a few $100s, others more. Years of questionable fines quietly undone. One neighbor stopped him while he was taking out the trash. "They refunded mine too," the neighbor said, voice low. "From last year." He nodded. "That's good. You didn't, push this publicly?" "No," he said. "I just sent records where they were supposed to go." The neighbor shook his head slowly. "Guess that was enough." It usually is. The HOA never contacted him again about the gathering. No follow-up, no clarification, no warning about future events. The incident was treated as if it had never happened. That's how institutions survive mistakes, by minimizing them. But credibility doesn't reset that easily. Attendance at board meetings dropped. The management company took over enforcement entirely. New signage went up, professionally printed, citing exact bylaw sections and appeal procedures. Everything became slower, more careful. That was the real consequence, not punishment, oversight. One afternoon, months later, he found the original folder still sitting in his desk drawer, thick, labeled, complete. He didn't delete it. He didn't need to. Its existence had already done the work. If this kind of story matters to you, real situations where calm documentation beats unchecked authority, this is a good moment to subscribe. Stories like this don't go viral because of shouting. They matter because they're believable. The HOA never apologized. They never had to. The system corrected itself once it was forced to look at its own paperwork. And that's the part people underestimate. Abuse of authority rarely collapses under confrontation. It collapses under records, under timestamps, under requests that demand answers instead of arguments. He still hosts family gatherings, same number of cars, same quiet conversations drifting out through the open door. No notices appear anymore, no clipboard visits, no threats. Just a neighborhood that learned, slowly, that authority without documentation doesn't hold up for long. And when it's challenged the right way, it doesn't need to be challenged twice. If you want more real high-stakes HOA stories like this one, where the fallout is lawful, quiet, and unavoidable, make sure you're subscribed, because the next one starts the same way, with a piece of paper where it doesn't belong.